Welcome to this Florida Department of Transportation training. Assessing land use changes is part of a video series providing guidance for sociocultural effects evaluations for transportation projects. This training has two parts. The first part examines issues associated with land use changes that could occur as a result of a transportation project. The second part describes a process for identifying and assessing potential land use changes. Let's get started. Land use changes is one of the 6 sociocultural effects issues. Together, these issues form a framework for the sociocultural effects evaluation. The physical fabric of communities is shaped by choices made about transportation and land use. These chief elements of community development are highly interrelated. Transportation affects land use, and land use affects transportation. Changes in the form or function of one usually leads to some change in the form or function of the other. In the sociocultural effects evaluation, the potential for land use changes are examined in terms of the character of existing landscapes, including recreation and open space lands, the project's consistency with local growth and development policies, and its compatibility with adopted land use plans. To facilitate the assessment of potential effects from land use changes, the department has developed a series of related SCE considerations, which I'll talk more about in the following slides. The first SCE consideration for the land use changes issue is the potential for the project to change the character of existing landscapes. The mere conversion of land to a transportation use will have some degree of effect on the landscape. Picture the clearing of vegetation or buildings to accommodate the project, or increasing the amount of pavement in the area. Look at the existing landscape in terms of the nature of land uses or activities taking place there, and the intensity, concentration, and integration or interactivity between land uses. Depending on whether the landscape is rural, suburban, or urban, the effect of the project scale is likely to be different. For example, a large-scale project in a compact urban setting would probably have more significant effect on the landscape character than in a rural or suburban setting. Changes in landscape character can also be an incidental outcome of a transportation action. New access or higher traffic volumes can affect the attractiveness of land for other uses. When one land use changes, it can trigger a change in another, creating a ripple effect and more widespread changes to the landscape. However, transportation investments alone do not change land use patterns. Numerous interdependent factors, including demographic, economic, and institutional factors, affect land use decisions. Market considerations are critical determinants of land use. If there is insufficient demand for the goods and services associated with a given land use type, land is unlikely to be sought for that use. The potential for land use changes is greater if land is located in a regional market, in an urban area, with higher population densities, a low unemployment rate, projected positive employment and population growth, and desired levels of traffic. The market area population and travel distance to airport, interstate highways, and major markets are also determinants of land use viability. Other factors affecting land use are land ownership, parcel size, utilities availability, environmental regulations, and local policies. There is typically a sequence of events that transpire between a transportation planning decision and any indirect land use changes associated with it. What most commonly occurs, in a very simplistic sense, is that changes in accessibility lead to changes in land values. Land values, being a reflection of economic opportunity, influence development investment decisions by the private sector and government. Development investments influence the number of people and jobs attracted to the area. If the direction of these events is positive, tax revenues are generated, enabling maintenance of public infrastructure, other urban amenities, and quality of life. Alternatively, if a transportation decision or other contributing factors result in land devaluation, the outcome would, of course, be different. The next SCE consideration concerns potential project effects on the amount of recreation or open space lands. These lands are the calm oases in our sometimes chaotic human environments. Communities also derive health benefits from parks and open space, where people can engage in physical activity. Sociocultural effects evaluation considers the project's consistency with growth and development policies applicable to the study area. Local governments in Florida must adopt a comprehensive plan that guides future growth and development in accordance with the Florida Community Planning Act and the community's vision and values. These plans address a range of community development issues, including coordinated land use and transportation. Land use policies are found in the future land use element of the comprehensive plan. Other plan elements may also contain land use policies, such as those addressing economic development or urban design. Policies are expressed in statements and in future year policy maps, including the future land use map, which depicts the location and extent of future land use designations. Related policy maps may delineate an urban service area where future growth is desired to take advantage of infrastructure investments and sometimes to avoid ecologically sensitive lands. Some plans have policies directing more intensive land uses to roadways meeting certain criteria, such as functional classification or number of lanes. Because transportation has a profound interrelationship to land use, the sociocultural effects evaluation also examines the project's consistency with the comprehensive plan's transportation policies. These policies are located in the transportation element, but in some cases may be in other parts of the plan. Again, policies are expressed as policy statements, as well as in future year maps depicting the location and characteristics of existing and planned transportation facilities and services. It is important that the project, as generally characterized in the project description, is consistent with its description in the comprehensive plan policies. For example, the same project termini and number of lanes. Communities having the potential for sprawl development are required to have policies in their comprehensive plan that discourage this inefficient land use pattern. Sprawl is dispersed, urban fringe, automobile-dependent development characterized by poor accessibility and single land use areas and strip development. Large-scale buildings, blocks, and roads, and land uses oriented to the automobile make sprawl areas poorly suited for walking, cycling, and transit. Its large development footprint and location beyond the urban area has negative implications for natural resource use, public infrastructure costs, decline of urban centers and suburbs, and disadvantaged urban and suburban residents. Without adequate land use controls, the community's plan for its future can be vulnerable in the face of greater accessibility to outlying greenfield areas. The final SCE consideration under the land use changes issue is the project's compatibility with other adopted land use plans applicable to the study area. These may include plans addressing a large sector of a county, a neighborhood within a city, a special district such as a community redevelopment area or enterprise zone, or other areas with special designations for which land use is a concern. In this community plan, the primary goal is preserving the rural landscape. A local government policy ties future commercial development partly to the number of lanes on the adjacent road. To limit commercial encroachment, 2-lane roads are the preference expressed in this community's plan. That covers the issues. Now let's walk through the process for identifying and assessing potential land use changes. This point in the sociocultural effects evaluation process is Step 4, Evaluate Sociocultural Effects. In preparation for Step 4, we will have reviewed the project information, defined the study area encompassing any potential land use changes, and collected data that describes the community, including the land use context. You can learn more about Steps 1 through 3 of the sociocultural effects evaluation process by viewing Preparing for SCE Evaluation, a video on the department's SCE Resources webpage. Evaluating potential land use changes involves 3 main tasks: identifying the character of existing landscapes that could change as a result of the project, and determining their level of importance to the community. Assessing potential project effects on those landscapes, including both positive and negative effects, and gauging the severity of potential land use changes that the community perceives as negative. The first task, Task A, is to review the community information compiled during Steps 1 through 3 of the sociocultural effects evaluation process. This information includes the project information, demographic analysis, community resources data, and any prior public input. Through this task, we begin learning about the study area, its people, land use conditions, land use policies, and local preferences to help us later in identifying the potential for project effects. Thoroughly review the project information. The type and scale of the project will determine its spatial footprint, volume of activity, and other performance characteristics that could affect existing landscapes and land use plans in the study area. If economic development is a motivation driving the project, this will be stated in the project purpose and need. Economic development has implications for reasonably foreseeable land use changes, and therefore the indirect land use effects of these projects must be part of the sociocultural effects evaluation. The project demographic analysis tells us about the population characteristics of the study area. It also indicates the physical distribution of population groups in relation to areas where potential for land use changes exist. We need to know about the general population. That includes residents and people who regularly frequent the study area, such as workers and business patrons. We also need to be attentive to the presence of population groups that are more vulnerable to community change. These groups include protected classes identified in the Presidential Executive Order for Environmental Justice and Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. Learn more about preventing discrimination during transportation decision-making by viewing Facilitating Equitable Outcomes, a video series on the department's SCE webpage. During preparation for the sociocultural effects evaluation, a full spectrum of community information is compiled, typically from a database, such as the department's environmental screening tool. From the database information, select data that will help you understand the land use context in the study area, including existing and future land use, census-delineated urban areas, 2060 potential growth data, rural land stewardship areas and enterprise zones, property appraiser parcel data indicating parcel size and ownership, and parks, trails, and public lands. Then supplement the database information as needed to understand land use conditions and forces at play in the study area. Visit the local government's website and community development planner to identify applicable policies and plans, including the comprehensive plan, community and special area plans, other applicable policies and regulations, population, employment, unemployment, and traffic projections, and available market data. Also collect information during the field review. If there was a previous project phase, check the project diary for any public input that may indicate preferences or concerns about land use. This information will be useful for this last part of Task A, which is to assign a level of value to potentially affected community resources, in this case, landscapes and land use plans. If public input is unavailable or does not speak to the potential for land use changes, community outreach should be conducted. Talk to community groups that represent potentially affected areas, such as neighborhood organizations and the local government Parks and Recreation Board, to learn if there are any concerns or needs that could be addressed by the project. Outreach is also useful for verifying the accuracy of community resource data. Next is Task B, to assess project effects. This draws from the community inventory prepared in Task A and guidance from the SCE considerations. In the project development phase, the assessment will consider the potential for direct and indirect effects, and if indicated, cumulative effects. A cumulative effects assessment is not required in a planning phase sociocultural effects evaluation, but related observations may be noted. To learn more on this topic, see the Cumulative Effects Evaluation Handbook on the department's website. Potential land use changes that are directly attributable to the project include conversion of land to right-of-way, which could affect the capacity of remaining land for future development and the character of the community's physical fabric. Indirect effects would include land use changes in response to the project, including changed access, traffic volumes, and aesthetics. Cumulative effects include those that are influenced by the project's direct effects, the effects of past actions, and foreseeable future actions. To recap, the SCE considerations for the land use change issue fall under 4 categories: changes in the existing landscape character, increase or decrease in recreation and open space acreage, consistency with local growth and development policies, and compatibility with adopted land use plans. By providing a response to each SCE consideration that is relevant to the project will help you prepare a thorough SCE evaluation. The level of detail for the assessment will depend on the potential for effects and the severity thereof. To review the full versions of the SCE considerations, visit the department's SCE webpage. Task C, the final task in assessing project effects, is to gauge the severity of the potential effects that were identified in Task B. Consider the characteristics of the potential land use changes, including their relationship to the community context. The type, quality, and sensitivity of the affected landscape and its significance to the community are important. Determine if a potential land use change would disproportionately affect a vulnerable population. Contemplate the possibility of the land use change actually taking place and if it's likely to happen even if the project were not built. Consider the scale and extent of the potential changes and its cumulative impact when combined with other effects on the community. Factor the timing and duration of potential land use changes, and consider whether potential effects can be resolved through practicable mitigation measures. The final consideration when gauging the severity of effects is to seek input from the affected community. In the project planning phase, this input can be obtained through government advisory committees, such as a Planning and Zoning Board, or neighborhood organizations in the affected area. In later project phases, the public involvement effort should be broader so that all affected groups have opportunities to voice their concerns and preferences for the project. This concludes the training on assessing land use changes. If you have questions about SCE evaluation or suggestions for a training topic, please contact Dr. Rusty Ennemoser, State Public Involvement and Community Resources Coordinator. Additional resources and guidance are available on the department's SCE webpage. Links to resources referenced in this video are listed on the following slide. Thank you for viewing this production of the Florida Department of Transportation.